Okay, friends, hello. It is Thursday live Q&A with Leigh, and you get to see the studio kitchen background here from my Kitchen My Rules because I'm sitting here working on figs, which are coming in by the ridiculous pound load. And right now I'm dehydrating them because I don't know what else to do with the darn thing. So if you know of something that you could answer a question for me is what would you do with figs besides make fig preserves? And I've made enough for closing gifts for the next 4 years. And maybe you also like dried figs. That's now the snack of choice in our house because my dehydrator has been running nonstop. So let me tell you all the questions that we got in advance for this week. If I can get them loaded up here. A first question I want to answer came in after last week's live Q&A. And remember, you can ask me anything in the comments. I'm trying to kind of look over at Instagram, but the comments move too fast over here. So somebody will have to type it into the other channels where I can see it. All right. So Debbie asked a really good question that I think a lot of realtors would like an answer to. And hello, Romy from South Florida. All right, I'm getting caught up here. So Debbie said, I'm struggling to know what to say when buyers say, I want to wait until prices go down. So here's the thing. Before you create an answer to a question when you're a realtor, you better pay attention to the data in the back end. So here's what I want you to know about the real estate market. Prices may go down in some areas with some houses. And the way I look at it as this, all of us know that we are in markets where some neighborhoods have gone up more than they should. And when I say more than they should, we all know the 3 L's of real estate: location, location, location. Well, now we've moved into the 3 I's of real estate: inventory, interest rates, and inflation. So when you look at those items, as the markets have been on fire for the last 2.5 years, all zip codes have gone up. It's that whole rising tide raises all boats things. But we also know that when the lake's really high, you can't see the craggy rocks and the dead bodies. Have y'all seen the dead bodies cropping up over in Lake Mead? It's kind of horrifying, but I digress. But as the water levels come down, you can see the problem areas, and the problem areas appear first. So what I would say is that if your buyer is looking in the best area of town, like the best builder, the best zip code, the best schools, the best everything, I wouldn't think those prices are going to go off a cliff. But if they're looking in an area where the house is back up to the power lines and it's right under the airport traffic pattern and the builder is crap quality and there's lots of other issues going on, those prices may come down. And so your answer to all these questions kind of becomes it depends. So if a buyer says, I want to wait until prices go down, your next question is, well, what area of town do you really want to be in? Because if you want to be in the best area, those prices aren't likely to come down unless you run into a scenario like divorce, estate sale. There's always going to be a scenario where somebody's price will come down relative to the market. Now, if they think we're going to crash like we did in 08 or 09, there's no indicator that says we're going to see the markets fall off the cliff like they did in the Great Recession. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you're not really sure what happened to prices the last time, go watch The Big Short. It's totally dramatized, but it's probably the best explanation ever of tranches and what happened in the mortgage markets. So make sure that you explain that and let people know what's happening. So the other reason prices aren't likely to go off a cliff, we still have a shortage of rooftops. I know in the county where I live in Cabarrus County, and that is not Carrabba's, the Italian restaurant. It's Cabarrus, 1B, 2 R's. Thank you. And so in Cabarrus County, we have a shortage of 4,000 rooftops. And that's because we've had an influx of people. We have an influx of jobs, and there's a lot of really good things happening here. So even though interest rates are up, inventory is down. And even though inflation is up, inventory is down, and people have to live somewhere. So it just becomes a better in-depth conversation. And frankly, I think realtors have to do a better job of having in-depth conversations and not being so surface, y'all. I mean, if somebody's asking you to buy a house, you got to do a better job in the consultation of asking really good questions. And I'll tell y'all the question you should start with when somebody wants to buy a house. The first thing you should ask them is, may I ask you a few questions, and get permission first and then dive in. And also, I would remind somebody of this. If they don't want to buy right now, then make sure that you're aware what they're paying in rent. So ask that really good question, because they could buy for less than they're paying in rent, even as interest rates have gone up. And remember too, interest rates are likely to continue going up because regardless of the gaslighting that happened yesterday, there is not 0% inflation. Inflation just tailed off by 0.6 and showed 8.5% instead of 9.1. That's still a lot of inflationary pressure on people. So pay attention to these things and have the conversation, because somebody who's not buying is renting somewhere from somebody. And by the way, if you're a realtor who's not talking to your clients about investments, you're doing them a real disservice, because you need to talk to your clients about buying investment properties. It's always a good time to buy investment properties. You just got to watch what it costs per door and what the rents are coming in. And I'll just point out, the affordability crisis is best solved by mom and pop rentals, because mom and pop rentals tend to be the workforce housing and the less expensive stuff. The gaslighting that happened yesterday, where the administration said we had 0% inflation. That was not a 0% inflation. It just didn't go up last month, month over month. It went up by 8.5 instead of 9.1. So it was better, but it wasn't zero. So that's what the gaslighting was. Okay, so the next question I received: how did I build my confidence as a real estate agent? Oh, law. Well, the first thing you have to do to build your confidence as a real estate agent is go do research and learn things. So what's made me more confident is continually building my skills and talking to people who know more than I do. So for example, y'all, I got a text today from one of the queens of real estate, one of the most revered people in all of the real estate world, and that's Sandra Nickel from Montgomery, Alabama. You might know her as the Hat Lady. She has given more in the way of education and mentoring than she probably has any idea. You can find her in almost any good educational seminar in the front row at the aisle on the right-hand side. That's her chair. And she asked a question about something that I was doing in video, and I responded back. But you know what built my confidence was not knowing the answer. It was being asked. I mean, golly gee willikers, it feels really good when somebody recognizes what you're doing, especially when it's somebody that you revere. So first of all, don't be afraid to ask other people for advice and for information, because they might be as honored that you asked as you were to think of asking. But also what builds your confidence is knowing things that other people aren't paying attention to. And so when I say pay attention, look at what's happening in your multiple listing service. And so look at the days on market, look at list price to sales price average, look at how many houses are in the market. For example, I know I'm 4,000 rooftops short in Cabarrus County. You should know how many rooftops short you are in the county you serve, because that kind of information is often really extraordinary in the real estate market. And confidence does come from being extraordinary. Confidence also comes from spending time with people who will build you up, not tear you down. And if y'all didn't know, one of the heroes of my life is David Goggins. He wrote the book Can't Hurt Me. And of course, I follow and share pretty much everything he puts on Instagram. Go look at the post he put up today where he was talking about how sometimes you can get derailed by people who want to question what you're doing and rip you down. So think about those things. And the other confidence you have to have as a real estate agent is in knowing when to say you don't know things. One of the jobs of a great realtor is to be the source of the source. I see that one of my favorite home inspectors is over here on, hey, what's up, Wilson? And so when you know people who know things better than you do and are experts in their field, then you build your confidence by being able to tell the people you serve that you've got somebody who can help them. I've got Amy, who is the queen of countertops and is helping me replace my countertop right now. So when my clients say, what should I do for countertops? I don't have to know the answer. I can say, here's Amy's phone number, and that builds your confidence too. Okay, last week, this is the next question. This came from, Paula just tuned in. This didn't come from Paula, but it could have, but she probably already has a list. Last week, you mentioned having some CPAs and CFA relationships to advise clients on tax implications for selling. What other service professionals should I have in my arsenal as a realtor? You ready for this? And a lot of y'all already have these connections. You might not have made them into a list, so make it into a little list, because you should always make sure you have your people available. You should have a countertop person. You should have a painter. You should have an interior designer. And by the way, an interior designer who can work with all price points, because Somebody designing a luxury home is different than somebody designing a commercial space, and somebody designing a first-time home or a builder's model. Those are all different specialties. You should have a pool guy. You should have a landscaper. You should have, in addition to a landscaper, you should have a bush hogger. And I don't know what y'all call them up north. I guess you should call it a bush hog. That's still the machine. But you need somebody that can do big jobs in addition to just mow, edge, and blow. You should have an estate attorney. You should have divorce attorneys, and you should have at least 2 divorce attorneys so that you can produce a name for each person. No, Paula, you're the best in New Jersey. I love you, woman. And so you should have lenders. You should have at least 3 amazing lenders on your list, because it would be a violation of a lot of our ethics and legal obligations to only recommend 1, because that kind of looks shifty and shady. So you definitely want 2 or more so the consumer can have choices. And I would say in your vendor list, those preferred lenders, make sure somebody knows VA. Make sure somebody knows first timers and down payment assistance. Make sure you got somebody that knows HECM, which are also known as reverse mortgages, home equity conversion mortgages, because not everything is simple, and you should have a pro that could explain things. You also want to make sure that you have electricians and plumbers and contractors and handymen and somebody that can do a shed and somebody that can do a fence. And so by the time you think about it, your list is going to be really, really long, but you're better than Angie's List, y'all. Nobody wants to go to Angie's List and pay for a subscription when they can call their realtor and say, hey, who you got? They also don't really want to go on Nextdoor, because I'm just going to have to mention, have you noticed that Nextdoor, there's a question almost every week, whether that was gunshots or fireworks? And it's the most tiresome question ever, because sometimes it is a backfire on a vehicle. All right, so let's see. What are some of the biggest opportunities that come with a recession? Nick, I got an answer for you for that. Biggest opportunity you have in a recession is to say hey to people. Hey, just go say hey, because recession draws people into a space of fear, and fear is the most powerful emotion. We actually had a speaker at the NAR leadership event this week that drove home that point, that fear is the most powerful emotion out there and drives a lot of our decisions. Fear also drives indecision. And so when people are indecisive, they might just go sit on the couch. So if you're the realtor or lender or home inspector or interior designer or whatever it is that you do in life, and everybody else is pulling back, you get in front of things and go rebuild your relationships and go talk to people. I mean, that's what the biggest opportunity is fill that space. And frankly, so many people are fearful during a recession. Right now, a lot of realtors are panicking because they think we're going into the market we had last time. We're not going into that market in all likelihood, but because they're afraid, they're not doing anything. Well, that leaves a real gap because the consumer has questions. And when you look at the alternative to you, the living, breathing real estate professional, the alternative is a website or an app. They're not going to have a real conversation with anybody. So your opportunity becomes being that resource and being that person that says, hey, and finding out what's going on in their life so you can help. There's also opportunities when things like interest rates go up. And David, that's a great question. You know, what do you do when interest rates rise in September? You figure out what somebody's monthly payment is. Too many of us let that fear run wild. And then you say, oh, clutch your pearls, put your hand on your head. Oh, interest rates are up. Oh. No, stop it. Get some perspective. Y'all, I bought my first house when I was just a single little stripling, just a little young girl. I know, right? It looks like it could have been last year. But the reality is, when I bought that first house as a single person, it was an FHA loan. So I had 3% down because it was 3% back then, not 3.5%. And my interest rate was 11.75%. Because first of all, it was a stated income, no doc loan. Y'all remember those? Hey, because I was a 1099, right? And so that interest rate to you, listening to this right now, you're like, oh my gosh, that is so high. Didn't matter. I could hit the number, I could hit the payment. And that's what mattered the most. And frankly, buying my first house, I was so stinking excited to get into that house. I knew I could handle the payment. And so when interest rates go up, your job is to don't let people have fear jump in their way, but talk to them about payments. And frankly, Right now, realtors and their loan officer lender partners should be in the best relationship and communication ever, because when your buyers are looking, they should be getting reapproved nonstop. Go from pre-approval to reapproval. That is what needs to happen, because when interest rates change, the monthly payment can change. And that's what protects people, is knowing that they can cover that monthly nut. And now if somebody's monthly payment is looking too high, you're the realtor professional, you need to pull the reins and say, hey, friend, let's change our price point, because I don't want you to be house poor. I don't want you to be miserable. And I can tell you, as an old person in real estate, I've been in a lot of houses where there is not nary a mark on the carpets from furniture because they never could afford furniture. And we've all seen that at some point, and that's just no way to live, y'all. The house isn't supposed to bleed you dry. It's supposed to be a place where you can find some respite and some sanctuary and find some joy. And sometimes that means spending less and buying an extra can of paint at the Sherwin-Williams so that you can make it perfect. And if y'all didn't know, Sherwin-Williams will do a free 1-hour color consultation. If you go to your local Sherwin-Williams, they have interior designers on staff that will come out and help you pick colors. What an amazing service that is. So go make friends with them. All right, let's see if I missed any questions over here. Hello, Zelda. And I see Atlanta's here. All right, did I get everybody's questions? Let me check one more time. Hello, Instagram. Let's see, Paula had to go list a house. Of course she did. She's got an episode on my podcast, which is Crazy Shit in Real Estate. Y'all, Paula's story is hilarious. It has to do with flagpoles. I'll just leave that for you there. And let's see what else I can tell you guys today, because here we are at the end of our 20 minutes. And whoa, okay. Of course, this question would come in. Okay, thanks, Alice. What's one of the craziest, most unexpected moments you've had as a realtor? And what lesson did you learn from that experience? Okay. There are too many to list. And when you're in real estate, you suddenly find out that reality TV ain't got nothing on life in real estate. I will say one of the craziest moments I encountered was at a listing. This was a bank-owned property that I was assigned by a bank that's actually no longer in business. And I think that's proof I've been in the business a long time. I've outlived some banks, whoop, whoop, but it's also a reason to stick with small local regional banks. I'm just going to point that out. So anyway, I went to this listing appointment to go find out what the house was. I drove in, and I carry my 380 with me, because being a single woman out there on the streets in real estate, I mean, I'm married and all, but I mean, I was by myself, right? So by myself, single. Anyway, you know what I meant. So anyway, I rolled up at the property, and it was broad daylight, and there was some chains and concrete things like you see on the highway on the side of the driveway. I didn't think anything about it. I drove past them, rolled up to the house. It was a single wide that had brick added to the exterior. You know, that's a fancy trailer when they have bricked up the exterior. So it was a bricked up trailer. And so I didn't see how to get into the front door because it was all the way bricked up. So I went around the side, and I ran into this nice metal prefab building that was attached to the side of the single wide. And it had lots of high ceilings and drainage and lights and a lot of fluorescent lights. And so some of y'all might know I had stumbled into the side of that house was a grow house for entrepreneurs. And so this was an entrepreneur's house. So I kept going around the back side of that metal prefab addition, and there was a 2-story addition to the back of the single wide. It was a stick built. So if you're with me so far, we have a single wide with a metal prefab side on it, and then a 2-story stick built with a courtyard in the middle. So it was kind of an L-shaped of 3 different properties that were all basically duct taped together. And so I went through to trying to get into the back door of the house, and I saw some needles on the ground, which is why you don't wear flip-flops going into a vacant listing, and you wear shoes with real heels on it and real soles. So I walked in over the needles. I didn't step on them. I stepped over them. And I went in the house. There was an IV bag hanging from the breakfast room light fixture. And I said, oh, well, all right. So now we have home health care in addition to an entrepreneur's house. And so I checked out the whole thing. I did not go upstairs, for the record, in the stick built part of the 2-story, because it just didn't feel safe. And there was also an above ground pool. And if you know anything about real estate, now you're thinking, well, Leigh, of course there was an above ground pool, because that totally makes sense. So anyway, I did my visual. I confirmed that it was indeed vacant, took some pictures, and got the lock ready to secure it. And I got back in my vehicle to leave. And when I'm coming up the driveway, there is a man out there with a shotgun, and he had it pointed right directly at me. And so I stopped the car and I got out and I said, "Hey," and he said, "You're trespassing." I said, "Actually, I'm just a realtor. No big deal. I'm not a scary person. I'm listing this house for the bank." And he said, "Bank doesn't own this driveway." And I said, "Well, this is the driveway that goes to this house." And he said, "They never owned the driveway. You're trespassing." And he was very grumpy and ill. And I said, "Well, I won't trespass anymore." And then I noticed that those concrete blocks I mentioned to y'all before with the big chains, the big chain had been pulled across the driveway. And so I said, would you please move the chain and let me out?" And I was incredibly nervous and about to pee in my pants, so scared. But I persevered, because sometimes as a realtor, you just have to smile and be glad that your hair was fixed when you started, and just get out of there. And so I talked him into letting me out of the driveway, and I got out of there and I called the representative at the bank and I said, "We have a little bit of a problem. We don't have access to this house. And I just got a man pointing a gun at me and chained me in, but I got out. And so can we please help?" And so long story short, too late, the bank had to write this man a check for us to have a written easement to access the driveway. And so he got $25,000, y'all, and for us to have access to that driveway so I could sell this single wide attached to a prefab building attached to a 2-story that you couldn't walk upstairs in with an above ground pool. And somebody bought it. That's my favorite part of this whole story. Oh, and it was in the floodplain. And I don't mean like the made up FEMA 500-year one. I mean like the actual floodplain where the water actually comes in. Somebody bought it, paid cash for it, and to this day still lives there, because one of the things you should know about realtors, we often will go back in time and look at the tax records and just see if the property ever changed hands again, just because we like to look. And it's never changed hands again. I guess they probably can't find another house like it because it is unique and special. And the moral of the story is, A, you should probably be armed if you're doing real estate, but only if you're going to practice, because if you won't practice, then I really don't think you should be armed. And second of all, every house has a price. Doesn't matter how messed up and janky it is. If you were to price a house at $1, somebody somewhere will bid on it. And the third thing is stay calm and be nice to people who are pointing guns at you, because they might not pull the trigger if you are polite enough. And always carry extra underpants in your emergency kit in the back of your car. And so that is our live Q&A for the day. And thank you for asking that question, Nick. And aren't y'all so glad that you got to hear that story? That's what you logged in for. So remember, Thursdays at 5:30 Eastern time, I'll do live Q&A if you have questions about anything related to real estate. And if you are looking to get your business straightened up while you're rolling through the plans of whatever's happening with recession, whether it's heavy, deep, or goes sideways, we don't know. My new class is dominatethis recession.com. It's fairly inexpensive and it will get your business on track no matter what the market does. So go to dominatethis recession.com. And in the meantime, that's all I got. I'll see y'all next time.